Hi,
Hi,
Andy.
everyone.
How are you?
Yeah, okay, thanks. For a Monday.
So thank you for joining us. I'm Kate, this is Matt. So we just work in the marketing team at the university, and the aim of this podcast is just to kind of show people the different avenues that they can go down when it comes to what career they want. So for you, for example, you've gone into politics. The obvious choice at university might be to study a politics course, but we read that you studied English at university. So it just shows you that there's so many different options you can take. So for you, what made you decide to study English? Was that always something you wanted to do?
I didn't know I did want to study English, to be honest. I originally thought I was going to study Spanish. I was quite good at Spanish when I was at school. And that was my main A-level when I kind of went into sixth form. And I just started getting good marks at English. And I got into some of the poetry that we were studying at the time, Philip Larkin and other things. And my English teacher started saying, "Oh, you're really good at it. You should think about," and I was shocked at the time, apply for Cambridge. I was like, what? And so it kind of came a little bit from nowhere, but it's just because I enjoyed it. I started to do better at it. Yeah. And I suppose my story is something that might resonate is that always go with what you enjoy and what you kind of are interested in, because sometimes you get advice, don't you, saying, "Oh, take this because you'll get this career at the end of it," or "Take that because it's good for your CV," or something. Actually, I think you're more likely to do well if you actually enjoy it rather than just being told because it's the right thing to do or whatever.
Like, I did English at uni, and it's like politics wouldn't be like the natural transition in my head. So would you talk a bit more about like how that actually came about, like going from doing an English degree to getting more into the political sector?
Yeah. So it's interesting that, because my dad used to say that to me about, "Oh, what job are you going to get with an English degree?" And I can remember pointing him to a quote from Arthur Scargill. I don't know if you know that name, but Arthur was the leader of the Mine Workers Union. And his quote said something like this: my father reads the dictionary every day. He says your life depends upon your power to master words. And I used to sort of throw that back at my dad, who was quite into union labor politics and things. And I think it does. I would say to anyone, don't be talked out of English, because your ability to master language is absolutely critical to a whole range of career options. And I don't regret it at all, actually, studying English. And I think in politics particularly, it really matters. Yeah. Your ability to articulate what it is you're trying to do, to kind of win people over to what you're trying to do. You could argue that it's absolute core skill in terms of politics, being able to be precise about words and to use them to win people over and build a cause. So yeah, I think sometimes I think the advice young people get is a little too rigid, and I think we need to get back to looking at, particularly at creative subjects, putting the right value on them. I don't think creative subjects have the right value on them in the school curriculum. I think they are much more valuable than the message that is currently sent out.
Yeah, that's pretty key to the essence of the podcast, is sort of to shift the perception of creative humanities degrees, because people tend to think of them as quite narrow. And
what people say, in a derogatory way, "Oh, what job are you going to get with that?" And actually loads of jobs you'll be able to get.
Yeah. So how exactly, once you left uni, did you go straight into a job that was linked to politics, or did you kind of shift around?
No, I shifted around quite a lot. So I graduated in 1991, which was quite a tough time from an economic point of view. So, it wasn't easy. Came home here and originally wanted to work in the media. I thought my English degree was most pointing me in that direction.
Right.
And I must have sent, certainly 3-figure numbers of CVs around to, media outlets all over the country. Had an interview for the Warrington Guardian, turned down. Manchester Evening News turned down, Liverpool Echo turned down. In the end, after 6 months of trying, the only job I could get was as an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian. And that was my first kind of foot into the world of work beyond university. So I have to add though, yeah, how do you live on unpaid reporter, you know? So I did that for a couple of months and I just kind of realized I couldn't make it work. And I think what I had to do was something that my generation had to do that I don't think yours does, which is if you want to get on in life and find the job you want, you have to go south. I think we had to do that in that era. The jobs just weren't here. Media City wasn't here.
Yeah.
You know, it was basically what people did if you wanted to get on in life. So I did get a job via the Cambridge University Career Service, working for a trade publishing house, which wasn't what I wanted to do. It was like transport magazines. I didn't go to university thinking, you know what, I really would like to write for a passenger rail management. No, but it was obviously a paid job in London. And it was to get my foot on the ladder, basically, which is what it did. So no, I was doing that for a while as the 1992 general election was getting closer, and I lived in London through that, and I got really kind of wound up about that. You know, I thought I wanted Labour to win, and Labour didn't win, and so I came out of that kind of election really fired up about politics, and that's where I started to move more in a political direction.
So when you were considering going into politics, were you always considering a leadership position, or were there other roles that you were considering that you wanted to do?
No, at the time, I just, I didn't go into it thinking, oh, I want to be an MP or a mayor. I just wanted to work for the Labour cause, I guess, is the only thing I would have said back then. If you asked the 22 or 3-year-old Andy Burnham, I would have just said, well, I just want to contribute to a Labour government kind of taking power.
Yeah,
that's what drew me that way. And eventually it was just I did apply for political jobs and didn't get them. And like anything in life, sometimes you just have these incredible moments of luck that you've got to spot when they happen. In my case, I was sitting at work in this place, this trade publishing place, and I was saying about how I really wanted to get into politics. And that was what I really wanted to do. And the person I was sitting next to just said, oh, my stepmother got elected as an MP a few weeks ago. Why don't you send a CV to her? And I did. And that eventually got me into working within what you might call the Labour movement. So that MP was somebody called Tessa Jowell, who ultimately became quite a very significant national figure. And I was just lucky to be in a position where I had an indirect connection to her.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, oh, sorry.
We don't usually do tests at this time.
It's not a test, unfortunately.
No.
Oh, right. Okay. How you were saying about in the past, people would have to go down south to like look for jobs. Like, we both came to work in Manchester. So, like, what do you think it is that's like sort of shifting that Manchester's more attractive to people, or?
Yeah, so it's a funny one. Just to explain, answer both questions there, if I can. Because I was down in London in the 90s because of having to go there for work, and then I went to work in Parliament, and then I guess that gave me the ambition of being an MP, and that's where that eventually led to. But I was the MP for Lee up here, so I was kind of like half home again, if you like. And I had 16 years as an MP in Parliament, and in the end, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's not really set up to listen to the North. And when the Mayor of Greater Manchester role came around, I thought, well, actually, that would be something that is much more kind of in tune with really what I'm trying to do. And it was a sort of natural thing at that point then to put myself forward for that. I'd kind of fallen out of love with Westminster and the strange way it works and the sort of snobbery of it and everything like that. And I just thought, no, if I go home and fully focus on, Greater Manchester, then I think that will work better from my perspective. And 5 years on, I think that feels right to me. That is exactly what's happened. I think the thing is, though, the reason why I had to go south in the first place was because the jobs just weren't here at that time. The skyline of city centre Manchester was nothing like it is today. I mean, it's unrecognisable now compared to what it was then. And as I said, there were organisations there are organisations in the city now that just weren't here all those years ago. So it just shows you how much the city has changed in what is a sort of 30-ish year period.
On the north-south divide, I know you've spoken in the past about like levelling up and what you think about that, but how do you think universities like the University of Manchester, how important do you think they are to the levelling up agenda? How can they help?
I think they're massively important. I think they are agents of levelling up, not least because the University of Manchester brings people from all over the country, including the south, to see this city and to experience it. And then many of them stay here. And I think that has the reverse effect to the one I was describing before. But then if you think about all of the things that come out of the university in terms of the research and development, obviously graphene is the one everyone thinks of most, but there's loads of other things that come through, aren't there, in terms of the innovations that come through the university. So they're hugely important to us, and also the students. And I think one thing I'd like to work on a bit more is keeping more graduates in the city. I don't think we do enough when people are here studying to explain the jobs that there are now in our city centre. I think many people who graduate will be quite happy to stay in Manchester, but we probably don't do enough to sort of show them what the opportunity that's there for them. And that's something that I want to work on a bit more as Mayor.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good point. So in terms of like the north-south divide, do you sort of see that reducing in prominence, or do you think there's still sort of a way to go with that?
Oh, I think there's a way to go. And it's frustrating. If anything, it might have got a bit wider through the COVID experience. And just in terms of transport, you just look at the difference between what we have to put with and what they have there. When I went to Cambridge in the 1980s, it opened my eyes to the fact that we're two countries, that England is in effect two countries. There are, let's say, the more working class, more deprived parts of the country. And then there's a different connected world linked to public schools and, and privilege of all kinds. And these two places are almost like worlds apart within the same country. And I don't think it's changed that much, actually. I think we still live in a country where the postcode of the bed you're born in still pretty much determines what type of life you're going to have. And some people just don't have the look or the connections or whatever it is, to break through that. It's still kind of an exception to break through that rather than the norm. So I think that there's a very big divide in this country, both geographical divide between north and south, but also just a big class divide still. And I think if anything, for your generation, I think it's possibly even harder to break, to break through some of that, just because life is like so much more insecure these days, isn't it? And you've got the whole burden of debt, and it's harder to get a house. Anyway. I think if anything, it's even going further in reverse, and that's a real worry.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we'll end it on a lighter note.
Oh, yeah, on that light note. And having said that, Kate, I have huge faith in your generation, because I think you're resilient for the reason I just gave, but also I think you look at the world through slightly different eyes, and you don't see the difference between people that almost we did in the 70s and 80s. I just think, I don't know, I feel your generation kind of have got the right values and sort of vision for the way things should be. My generation has messed up politics, so yours is the one that's going to be there to fix it, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's good responsibility.
Couldn't do any worse than us.
Well, thank you. We'll just end it on, do you have any final advice for someone who is considering a career in politics? Just a quick little...
Okay, definitely. So it may come to you at any point in your life, politics. At some point, you might find yourself getting really engaged in it, as I did, but it could come at any age. So never rule it out. There's no one route into politics. There's no one degree to study, nor no one job to do. By definition, politics has to draw people from all backgrounds and all sort of all different knowledge bases. That's how it works, and that's how it works when it's working at its best. I think my generation was a bit the generation of professional politicians who went in quite young, and I think there's nothing wrong at all with doing a job first in your 20s and then maybe thinking about going in your 30s. In the end, I did do that, but I did work as my job outside of being an MP was as working in the back room of politics, if you like. The key thing I would say would be, to believe that you can do it. I can remember it being some time before I first had the confidence to say in front of people that I wanted to be an MP, because I kind of feared, I guess, people would say, "Oh, what you can't do that," and it took me a while to sort of really believe that I could do it. And I guess that's a product of people who come sort of from the north and other, but you're kind of a bit less sort of out there and I'll be this or I'll be that, and that. But even if you don't want to sort of vocalize it, as long as you've got sort of belief internally that you can do it, and I would say to everybody, you definitely can do it. And the thing about wanting to go into politics finally is, if you're seeing it as a career where you can get paid this much and you can, then I think that's the way the only politicians that are truly successful, in my view, are the ones who are coming in to change something. That is why you do it. Because in this day and age of social media, there's a lot of negatives, if you like, and a lot of kind of challenges that you have to put up with. And the only way I can sort of kind of make that manageable is by the satisfaction you get from bringing in a change that benefits loads of people. So it's sticking on that, really. Politics is about changing the world in a big way or a small way or some way.
Yeah.
And you've got to go into it with that as your driving force. I used to be in Parliament with people who were in it just to be in it, and in it because of the status or something like that. And you can quickly differentiate those two groups of people. So go into it for the right reasons, and I think that will come through, and you're more likely to succeed if you do it for that reason.
Well, thank you. That rounded it off really well.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. We really appreciate you joining.
Sorry, it was a podcast of two halves.
Gives us a little fun interval.
Little interlude in the middle of it. Funny when I'm disappearing off. All right. Nice chatting to you both.